We've driven into Europe 7 times in various EVs. We started in 2019 with the Kia e-Niro. That seemed like quite a big deal at the time, really. Since then, we've gone in the Hyundai Ioniq 5, Tesla Model 3, the Peugeot E208, the e-Niro again, the Renault Scenic, and most recently, the Volkswagen ID.7. So, we know a thing or two about driving long distances in an EV. And it gets increasingly trivial. With every year that passes, there are faster charging cars, way more chargers everywhere. So really, it's not too big a deal these days, depending on where you're going. Anyway, I just thought I would compile a little checklist, things that might help you if you're planning a road trip in an EV. And although I'm going to be focusing on England into mainland Europe, wherever you are in the world, hopefully some of these tips will be applicable to you. So after years of experience, these are my top tips for driving long distances in an EV. And this video is sponsored by EVision Electric Vehicles, the UK's first and largest all-electric vehicle hire company. I'm going to use the i3 as my studio today. I haven't done a road trip in the i3, maybe I should. Firstly, if you like this video, then please consider pressing that subscribe button and liking and commenting and tell your friends, because it all helps grow this channel. And while I'm on the subject of that, all the links I put on screen there are affiliate links, which means that I get a few pence if you buy any of these products. So if you do that, thank you so much. Right, obviously we'll start with the basics. If you're going from England into Europe, you've got to make sure you've got a UK sticker on the back. You've got to make sure you've got a warning triangle, fluorescent jacket, and you can get a kit that has all of this stuff in it. This is the one that came inside my second-hand Niro, but you can get loads of packs that have the same sort of things. Warning triangle, first aid kit, and luminescent jacket. Also make sure that your insurance and breakdown cover obviously is all fine for European travel. A jump starter, a 12-volt jump starter. You might be thinking, why on earth do you need one of these? So even though you've got that big expensive battery underneath, even though that does top up the 12-volt battery, sometimes it could fail. The 12-volt battery is dead. And I used one of these, and it was a godsend, really, because it means you don't have to call out breakdown assistance. So this is a relatively inexpensive bit of kit, and it's really worth having. It doesn't matter what car you got, EV or combustion engine, it's worth having one of these. It doesn't have to be very powerful for an EV. It doesn't need a lot of juice in this to get the EV up and running. All it has to do is get the 12 volt started a little bit so it can then engage the high voltage battery. So that's all it does. Anyway, really worth getting, honestly. Next up, this is a really good one, tyre inflator. This is our ugly looking one that we've got. It just plugs into the cigarette lighter, but you can get them battery powered as well. Although then that's yet another battery that you've got to remember to charge up, I suppose. But they're great to have. You can get tyre pressure warnings all the time, of course, and it's just better to have one of those in the car just in case. I did have to pump up the tyre on the Tesla Model 3 when we did that road trip, and also I think in the Peugeot E208 as well. So anyway, it could happen to any car that you're in. Again, it's not EV specific. So tyre inflator, get one of those. Next up, if you're driving through France, Italy, Portugal, and maybe Spain, I'm not sure, you'll find that there are toll booths all over the place. If you're on your own, this becomes a real problem. If you've got someone in the passenger seat, it's fine, they can just lean out and pay. But if you're on your own, it's a nightmare. Oh, what's that? I think I've just scratched the alloy wheel. Shit. Could have been worse. Especially if you have a car where you can't easily get across to the other side. Wow. Oh, mild concussion, but at least I could scoot across to the other side because of this beautiful flat floor car. So I would highly recommend one of these. Now this is called a Bip&Go, the one that we've got. This is a toll tag. You put this on your windscreen, and when it drives through, it'll go beep, and then the barrier lifts. This is wonderful. Even if you've got a passenger that doesn't mind doing all the paying and stuff, this is just so much easier because you go through on the fast lane, which has a T above it. And you can use this in France, Italy, I think Portugal, I don't remember, but it's wonderful when it works. Our Bip&Go didn't work the past 2 times. This is actually a replacement that they've sent out. Come on, you can do it. No, it didn't work. You okay?
But if it didn't work last time, why did you think it would work this time?
But when it does work, it's fantastic. So the only issue is that if you're in the UK anyway, you have to have a SEPA bank account, S-E-P-A. This was after Brexit, this came in. And our bank account is nationwide and that doesn't. So I've linked it up with a Barclays account, which does. So that's something to bear in mind. But this is a fantastic thing. If you're planning on doing a road trip, it's great. There's no subscription charge, it is pay as you go. So it's just a wonderful thing to have. One of my members made a really good point, and that is maybe it's better not to do the toll roads when you're driving through France, for a few reasons actually. So if you do I'll call them the back roads, but they're still kind of fast roads. Do the back roads, you see more interesting places. You see places in France that you wouldn't ordinarily see. They're cheaper, of course, because you don't have to pay the tolls, but they're also cheaper because the car's going to be more efficient. You're not doing 130 kilometers an hour, so you won't have to charge quite as much, so you don't have to pay quite as much for electricity. So it's maybe the better way of driving through France, better way of having a road trip, more enjoyable and cheaper. What do you think? Loads of places around the world have air control measures in place, a lot of cities, and France is certainly hot on that. And you might have to get a sticker called a Crit Air sticker. This is one that I haven't actually attached to the Niro. So you've got to go onto the website and get one of these stickers. Different places will have different schemes, I imagine. I think Italy has their own scheme for certain cities as well. So even though you've got an EV and that's fine to drive around, you may still have to get a sticker. So do a little bit of research. Once you know where you're going, just check up about that so you don't get caught out. I know this is really obvious, but bring your Type 2 cable. If you do any kind of slow charging anywhere, most of the time the cable is not attached. Sometimes you'll find it is, but most of the time it's not. So you want to bring that. And by the way, embrace slow charging, because there are so many slow chargers. It just makes sense to be charging slowly overnight when the car is parked. And while we're on the subject of slow charging, extremely slow charging in this case, take your granny charger. It's just good to have it just in case. Also, if you go to an Airbnb, then it might be that they are happy for you to have some of their electricity. Obviously, ask them beforehand. And of course, if you're going into Europe, there are different plugs. Let's dig into the exciting world of adapters. Right, if you go to Europe, in most places in Europe, they use a standard 2-pin like that. And this is a really good adapter, actually, that allows you to plug in lots of different plugs and convert to a normal Euro 2-pin. So that's really good. If you go to Switzerland, they've got a slightly weird looking adapter here, like that. And if you go to Italy, things get even more complicated. They've got something called the Type L, which looks like that. And they've got two types of this. So this one here is the 16 amp. These are a little bit thicker and spaced further apart. And then you've got the 10 amp one there. And these adapters allow you to plug in the normal Euro plug into there. And if you go to Italy, then you can get these adapters all over the place. They're very common, because even Italians get driven mad, I think, by these. But take your granny charger. In the early days, I did use that at a hotel, and they've since put in chargers. There's no charging point at the hotel that we're at, but in the underground garage, we found that. So I'm going to try and plug in there. We have asked them, and they said it's fine. So the granny charger is just a wonderful thing to have just in case. And just to say, if you do use the granny charger, maybe reduce the amps so you're not drawing so much power. It will mean that the charge takes longer, but there's less chance of you overheating the power socket. If you're going to be doing some rapid charging, then please don't leave the car parked at 100%. I mean, not at a busy place anyway. It's just better etiquette to move your car, so do that. In fact, I've noticed that French services now, there are signs up, even like just next to the toilets, just saying move the car after it gets to 80%. So if you can imagine, especially in busy periods, lots of people want to use chargers. And yeah, you don't want to be the kind of person that's just stuck there camped at 100% for ages. So move your car. You could tackle an EV road trip in many different ways. Well, any road trip, let alone an EV. You can just not plan, and that's absolutely fine. Just use the car's sat-nav. Well, yes, that's obviously a good option, especially if you've got a Tesla, which has always been the gold standard. Any Google car, Polestar, Volvo, and Renault, fantastic sat-navs they've got. Well, it's Google, so you know it's good, and it tells you where to charge and all the rest of it. So they're really good, but even the Volkswagen ID.7, when we drove that, it's brilliant. It tells you very accurately what kind of battery percentage you'll have when you get somewhere, and it tells you where to charge. We had no issues with that at all. So it's pretty good these days, just using the car's built-in sat-nav. Now, if you have an older EV, that's not necessarily the case. So we'll get onto that in a minute. Now, in terms of Tesla, the supercharger network is amazing. And of course, because you have exclusive access to a lot of the sites, it means that you are pretty much guaranteed to find a stall wherever it tells you to go. You can get in and just start charging. Now, sometimes they are pretty busy, and it will tell you if you're going to have to wait. Again, that's a brilliant thing about Teslas. It does tell you the average waiting time and things like that. And they also charge people for just leaving the car. If you go over a certain, sometimes it says 80%, but certainly over 100%, then it will charge that person. So that discourages camping out at chargers. A better route planner. For a rough idea of a route, you can use a better route planner. A better route planner is very good at telling you where you might want to go, and it's good at mapping out the chargers, and it knows all the reliable chargers and all the rest of it. However, it's quite conservative, and it's conservative because it kind of assumes really that you're going to be doing your maximum speed the whole time, but that's not the way it works, is it? You get roadworks, or whatever, you get stuck in traffic, or whatever it is, or maybe you just don't want to drive at the full 130 kilometers an hour the whole way. So fair enough. So we've followed it blindly in the Ioniq 5 and the e-Niro, probably the E208 as well, I can't remember, but you end up charging sooner than you actually need to. And that's not so good, really, because you want to get the battery down a bit lower. You get faster charging the lower the battery is, so really it's better to drive a bit further. And also it's better to charge when you want to eat, because then that means an EV road trip becomes so easy, because you're eating and charging at the same time. So a better route planner is pretty good at giving you a rough idea where to go, but don't follow it like it's the gospel or anything like that. What you can do, though, is link it up with an OBD dongle that plugs in. And if you do that, then it will tell you accurately where you should charge. But that's a whole extra level of faff that you really don't need to do in modern EVs. Just don't do it. Also, because the navigation in a better route planner, certainly when I last used it, admittedly over a year ago probably now, it's just not great. The navigation is not as good as the inbuilt sat-nav probably is, certainly not as good as Apple Maps, Google Maps. So anyway, as a rough guide, a better route planner is brilliant. Or you might want to use Apple Maps, and I really love this approach. Obviously, if you've got a Google phone, this doesn't apply to you, but I'm sure Google Maps probably does something similar. But you could be driving along using Apple Maps on CarPlay, and you could just decide to, I want to stop. So go to Add Stop, and then select charging stations, which shows up in a lot of EVs, but not all, frustratingly. Go to charging stations, and it tells you all the different charging stations along your route and how much it's going to add to your journey, which is important because you don't necessarily want to do a 20-minute detour or something like that to charge. So that's really good, and it's a lovely way, I think, of just adding charge stops. It feels a bit more natural. So the other option is that you just don't bother planning at all, and that's what we did in the Kia e-Niro, and it worked mostly fine. So different places in Europe will give you a different experience, really. Driving through France is an absolute dream. It's just wonderful. Every motorway services you stop at, there's a decent hub. So France is great. Netherlands is great. Norway is probably fantastic, although I've yet to go up there. From what I hear about Spain, it's not so easy. Italy's not too bad these days, but I don't know, probably worth doing a little bit of planning. And Germany, it can be good and it can be bad. Now, if you stop at Tank und Rast, if I've said that correctly, services, you might find that the ENBW chargers they've got there either aren't working. So it's a bit of a crazy situation, really. That there's all these chargers here, but that one is completely broken. That one down there didn't seem to work. This one over here didn't work as well. But anyway, it's not so bad now because it's a little bit quieter, but if you come at lunchtime on a busy day like we did, then obviously it gets a bit chaotic. Or there aren't any. So that's not so good. But if you go to an Autohof, again, sorry if I've said that wrong, then you'll find that it's still off the motorway, but usually a little bit further to go, but still, it's still relatively convenient, and there are normally more chargers there. So that's a top tip if you're driving through Germany. But what I would say is that all of this is getting better all of the time. It feels so much easier now than it did back in 2019, honestly. You may want to do what we do and break up the journey by stopping at hotels. And hotels.com, booking.com and Airbnb, they've all got filters now, so you can select which ones have EV chargers. And that's really good. And we've done that loads of times, and it's lovely leaving a hotel with 100% charge. However, don't rely on the fact that that charger is going to be available, because they may just have one and someone else might be using it. Some hotels are better than others in terms of the number of chargers. Some may say they've got chargers, but they're Ionity, for instance, and you find they've got like 12 there, which is great, obviously, or Tesla superchargers. So You could do a little bit of research if you wanted to, but it is lovely waking up in the morning with 100% battery, and then you've got hours and hours of driving without having to stop until you want to stop for lunch or something, which is a great way of doing it. Now, I did do a video about finding chargers for hotels, so watch that if you want. There was a time when you needed a lot of apps and you needed a lot of RFID cards to activate chargers. This is much better now. Most chargers in England, you can just pay using a normal bank card, which is great. It's very convenient. Europe's still a little bit slow to catch up with this, but what you can do is get one card that seems to work with most chargers. And the one that I use is Electroverse, and I'll put the little link up on screen, of course. Electroverse is really good. Often tends to be cheaper as well, especially if you're an Octopus Energy customer. It tends to be cheaper to getting a charge on that. So that's really good. You might also want to explore a subscription, and a subscription you can do with many providers now, I think, but Ionity, I've got one at the moment with Ionity after just doing the road trip with them, and you pay £10.50 a month for their power subscription, for instance, and then you get much cheaper charging. And you can cancel it, by the way. You don't have to keep it all year or anything like that. Cancel it and just have it for 1 month if you want. Now, this is the Ionity RFID card. You can order that if you want through the app once you've set up a subscription, and it's free. They'll send it out if you have a subscription, but you can just use the app as well. And I used the app when we did our ID.7 road trip, and that worked absolutely fine, although the internet connection was a little bit dodgy in one place. I don't actually have any internet at the moment. And then I was thinking actually having an RFID would have been good, but I didn't get this until I got back home. What I would also say is an RFID card tends to be quicker to get the charge going than it is to use a bank card, just the way it is. Also, you don't get any pre-authorization charges and things like that. So RFID cards are brilliant. If you don't know what these are really, and you're all new to EVs, it's just like a fuel card, really. So just think of it like that. You can also do subscriptions with Tesla, and then you get really, really cheap charging. Road trips can be fun. They can be arduous because we still get stuck in traffic. You know, there's still roadworks, and that doesn't change whether you've got an electric car or a petrol, but still they can be fun. What I would say is whatever car you've got, break it up a little bit and explore different places. It's a lovely way of doing a road trip. And I would say that EV road trips these days are very easy, especially if you've got a relatively modern car that tells you where to go on the route planning. That's all pretty easy. If you've never driven in mainland Europe before, you'll find driving through France is a dream because the roads are lovely and you don't get middle lane hoggers like you do in England. The autobahns in Germany can be a little bit scary because they're so fast, but it's so enjoyable, I think, doing a road trip and seeing different places. And it's interesting that as time goes on and EVs charge faster, and they charge pretty fast these days, really, you do still find yourself doing what you would do in a normal petrol car. You drive for hours and hours, you stop, you eat, and in this case you charge, and then you drive for hours again, and then you reach your destination. And we're so lucky in Europe to have so many regions full of amazing food and wine, if you're into that, and amazing places you can see. So just enjoy this fantastic continent. Whatever car you do a road trip in, just explore the wonders of Europe and just enjoy it. And if you have an EV, I'm sure you won't have any problem at all. And as I say, I've done it 7 times now, and it gets easier every year. Where have you been in your EV? Have you been anywhere exotic? Tell me in the comments. Wherever you are in the world. Have you driven across Australia? That's another one I want to do. Tell me in the comments. And have I forgotten anything? If there are any top tips that you want to tell people about doing a road trip, then let me know. And I think that's it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please press the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of other videos. And I'll be back very soon. Bye for now.